Welcome to The Mystery of Life. I'm Jo.
And I'm Jonny.
And today we're asking what happened to Sister Margaret Ann Pahl. Now, I'm guessing you don't know much about this one.
No, I assume you mean nun by when you say sister.
I do, yes. And it's a fairly tragic story. We are talking true crime and it does get quite dark. So let's just dive in, I guess. So Margaret Ann Pahl was born on the 5th of April, 1908. She was one of 9 children born to Catherine and Frank, farmers in Ohio. We have spoken about Ohio for the last 3 episodes now. I promise to move our podcast away from Ohio after this.
The Mystery of Life, the Ohio-based podcast.
Yeah. Well, we had this and then we mentioned it in Bigfoot because there's a lot of Bigfoot sightings there. And then
shit happens in Ohio. We can't help that.
You know. Now, they were a devoutly Catholic family and Margaret Ann had cousins who were nuns. So no one was overly surprised when Margaret Ann announced that she wanted to be a nun. And evidently she sort of had this calling, maybe, from quite a young age. And look, like the nun life isn't for everyone, but it's important that you love what you do. And it seems like she did. So power to Margaret Ann.
Yeah, totes. Not for me, but...
Well, no, definitely not for you as a man. I don't believe they've changed the rules in nun school.
I meant the lifestyle, you facetious git. All right. Sorry. I wouldn't like to be a monk.
So once she left school, she went to a convent and retreat around 100 miles or so away from home called Our Lady of the Pines in Fremont. And it was part of the Sisters of Mercy. Sisters of Mercy was founded in 1831 in Ireland and now has congregations worldwide. It's like a religious institute for Catholic women. Well, obviously, I guess, if it's like covenants and nuns. But it didn't start off that way. It actually started off as a house who took care of the poor and it grew and it was blessed by the Archbishop and so on and so forth. So I don't want to get too bogged down in the Sisters of Mercy on the whole because, you know, they do a lot of good.
They do nun stuff.
They do nun stuff. As with any
I once told a nun to fuck off by accident.
Why?
I was crossing a road and she didn't indicate.
Was she driving?
Yeah.
Right.
So I was crossing the road, but she didn't indicate to come into the road, so I thought I was safe. And like, so this car just approaches me and nearly hits me, and I turn around and go, fuck off. Nun.
Oh.
Full headgear, like. Then I immediately apologised because it was a nun. And I thought, I'm in the right and I'm apologising.
But they did, the Sisters of Mercy on the whole do a lot of good. As with any lengthy religious organisation, especially with one, you know, as old as this, it does have some dark times. There was some controversy around, especially the Victorian asylums that they ran. But that was a dark time in history for everyone. So I feel like we can just move on.
I don't think they were trying to be evil. It's just
no, they weren't.
That's what the time prescribed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. If you dig deep enough into any religious organisation that's been around since the 1800s, you'll find some sort of controversy.
I can make Mother Teresa look like a right cunt if I want to.
But on the whole, they really do a lot of good. They have like hospitals and schools. They do a lot of community work, you know, and they actually still, they've founded and still run quite a lot of schools, hospitals and universities, including some in this school. There's actually 2 within a 10-mile radius of us.
That's cool.
Yeah. No, so back to Sister Margaret Ann. She trained as a nurse once she became a nun and trained as a nurse and eventually became director of Mercy's School of Nursing, as well as administrator of 2 other Sister of Mercy hospitals. And by 1980, Sister Margaret was 72 years old and was getting a bit hard of hearing. So at the time, she was caring for 2 chapels at the Mercy Hospital, and she was said to have been unwavering in her commitment to God, even at that age.
Even if she couldn't hear what he was saying.
Yeah. So in 1980, on Good Friday, now you see the Easter connection that I have brought to you. It was the 4th of April. Sister Margaret was said to have been a little upset with one of the priests who had performed mass that day, but it was shorter than Sister Margaret had hoped it would be. She felt this particular priest had cheated God out of what was his. She was just a bit upset.
Right. She wanted things done properly.
She did, yeah. Nonetheless, she went about her duties, and on Holy Saturday, which is the day before Easter Sunday, Sister Margaret Ann sets her alarm for 5 a.m. I don't know why she got up so early. I mean, maybe she's just got a lot to do.
I just think it's part of, I think it's just part of being a nun or old. My grandparents used to be. They just changed their body clock. They'll be in bed by 7 though. Right? They just don't have anything to do during the evening, but more to do during the day. So I think they adjust. Whereas
Maybe.
I can wake up at like 5 p.m. and still get shit done. They'll be like, the post office is shut.
Well, Easter obviously was a very busy time for the Catholics. So,
yeah,
you know, particularly that day, she might have had a lot to do.
Yeah, it's one of their It's one of their busy periods.
She was living in the upstairs living quarters at the Mercy Hospital at the time. And by 6:15 a.m, she was seen gathering cleaning supplies and leaving them by the altar in the chapel. In the dining room, she had breakfast, grapefruit, cereal and coffee, if you're interested in what nuns have for breakfast. There you go. Coffee I did actually find quite interesting.
I was a bit like, oh, coffee.
Yeah. And by 6:45, she was back in the chapel preparing for Easter Sunday service the next day, which of course is, pretty important in terms of religion.
Yeah. It's when Jesus rose from the dead, pretty important. And when the bunnies started laying the eggs. I'm not sure who did what first in the whole Easter story.
Yeah, I don't know. The bunny thing, I don't know. Don't know where that came from. I have some interesting Easter facts at the end of this, but it doesn't include the bunny. So you're on your own there.
I get why there's bunnies and chicks. Like the beginning of spring, isn't it? That's when the bunnies and chicks are born.
Well, didn't the eggs have something to do with...
But I don't know about the eggs and why there's a bunny hiding them. Like, how did the bunny get these eggs?
Well, no, I think...
Whose eggs is he stealing? Does he lay the eggs?
Hold on.
A few moments later.
According to Discovery News, since ancient times, eggs and rabbits have been a symbol of fertility. So even though rabbits don't lay eggs, the association of these symbols was almost natural. That's the first thing that comes up when you Google why Easter Bunny gives out eggs at Easter. So I don't know what, I'm still none the wiser, if I'm being honest.
But I know this is supposed to be about the nun, but we're moving on.
Well, we can take a moment to talk about Easter because this is our Easter episode. So I'm happy to...
So you mean we've been giving our children symbols of fertility?
Right, no, hang on. So History Channel, maybe that's a more reliable source. That says, from a Christian perspective, Easter eggs are said to represent Jesus' emergence from the tomb and resurrection.
No, that's just them shoehorning to make it make sense. No, I don't believe that. There's no egg in Christianity. Because I'm not comfortable with eating fertility symbols, kind of ruining Easter.
It says the Bible makes no mention of a long-eared, short-tailed creature who delivers chocolate eggs to well-behaved children. Okay. But it says the exact origins of this mythical mammal are unclear. So, I don't know. Yeah, so we're really none the wiser. So, But it does say, decorating eggs for Easter is a tradition that dates back to at least the 13th century. One explanation for this is that eggs were a formerly forbidden food during Lent.
Oh, that could make sense, but we'll never know.
So people would paint and decorate them. The Lent thing does sort of make sense, doesn't it? Because I forgot about Lent. I always forget about Lent.
It's not the favourite of holidays, is it?
Well, Easter's pretty good because you get chocolate.
Yeah, but
hot cross buns. I mean,
yeah, but the Lent bit no one ever does.
No. So anyway, we've taken a bit of a sidestep there and taught you nothing about the origins of Easter. Clearly, we're not religious. But even if we were, I feel like the eggs thing wouldn't come up in a Sunday service.
But if I was, well, the eggs about, mate.
Let us know if you're religious. Let us know if the vicar or the priest or whoever talks about Easter eggs on Easter Sunday. I'd be interested to know. Right, Sister Margaret. So just after 8 a.m, so we're back on Holy Saturday. Okay, just after 8 a.m, a young nun walked into the sacristy, which is a small room about 11 foot by 17 foot, just to the side of the altar. And this is where the priests get changed into their fancy service priest gear. If you didn't know, I didn't know that. We've learned something.
I didn't know that either.
So I can't teach you about eggs, but I can teach you about the sacristy.
They've got a name for everything. It's what everyone else would just call a room.
It's just a changing room, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a room.
There should be like a locker in there with his fancy hat.
He doesn't wear. I don't think they all get to wear a fancy hat unless they're a bishop.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but they
I don't know the hat etiquette.
They do put on special gear for their services. So whatever that was, they got changed in the sacristy.
Are they naked underneath their robes?
It didn't say. If you're a priest and you're listening, no.
Because otherwise, why do they need a room to put it on if it's just going over their clothes? Or why don't they just put it in the back?
I don't know. They have a special room for it.
Oh, God, so needy. Yeah. Oh, divas.
Right, well, so the nun, she walks into the sacristy and she screams because there, on the polished marble floor, was the body of Sister Margaret Ann Pahl.
How do you know she screamed?
Well, she reported it, I imagine. I imagine she was probably still screaming. I imagine lots of people said they heard her scream.
You never say...
in a hospital.
You never speak like that, though. Like in a narrative. So I walked in and then I screamed.
She might not have, but they interviewed everybody in the hospital. So I imagine someone said, I heard screaming.
Just saying, it sounds like hyperbole to me.
Okay, well, I can't believe that's the bit you want to argue with. I think you probably would scream if you found the body of a nun.
I'd be surprised in this house.
Well, I think I'd be equally surprised if I walked into the sacristy. I don't know what I'd be doing because I feel like that's not my place to walk into the sacristy.
No, because a dead nun in a church is way less surprising than a dead nun in our living room. Because what the fuck is the nun? Where'd the nun come from?
Yeah.
Someone's come in with a nun, murdered it and left. That's way scarier.
Right. We're getting off track again here. So, she had clearly been stabbed. There was a lot of blood and she was partially disrobed. Now, obviously, this was an absolute outrage because although, no murder is pleasant, like who murders a 72-year-old nun who literally devoted her entire life to caring for other people? One of the priests who read mass at her funeral service called it not only blasphemous, but patently absurd. And do you know what? I think I agree.
Well, yeah. I don't think you're going to hear many people go, no, that nun should have died.
No, I know, but I just mean like there's just a new level to it. Like,
I mean, easy prey. Like, she couldn't even hear you coming.
Yeah.
It's pussy. It's not something you go into prison and be like, yeah, man, look what I did.
The funeral was 3 days later, and many people reported some sort of poetic coincidence or even spiritual sign when stormy weather brought black storm clouds overhead and blew leaves into the entrance of the chapel, only to suddenly calm as mass came to an end. So that's quite cute.
Mm-hmm.
So you're probably wondering who kills a nun or who killed this nun. What are your thoughts at this stage?
She did have that argument. Maybe the priest was just like, I'm going to go, fuck you, nun, telling me how to do mass. You're a nun, bitch.
We don't know they had an argument. We just know that she was displeased.
Well,
and she probably did voice her opinions given that she was 72
exactly.
and been working there for an age.
He was probably like, oh, fucking go see God.
Okay, so the investigation. There are 2 little doors into this sacristy room where Sister Margaret Ann was found. One was locked and the other had its skeleton key in the lock when the young nun walked in. I don't know what significance that brings, but it's a key point. Police believed Sister Margaret Ann was strangled from behind first by someone with big hands.
I'm guessing from the size of the bruising. Or she just had a big neck.
I mean, the thing is as well, I find big hands an odd thing for the police to release because that was like the official statement in a lot of the newspapers was that.
Yeah, lots of people have big hands though. They don't mean comedically large, like you're going to notice.
But also just like there's no, like, I find it just a really vague thing to say. Maybe that was on purpose.
Maybe, but if you are the guy and you have got big hands, you're like, oh shit, they know something about me. Like, it rattles them, doesn't it?
She had been stabbed in the neck and the torso 32 times.
Ooh, angry.
And there was 9 wounds on her chest in the shape of an inverted cross.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Right, it's a nutter. Well, no, actually, I think it could still be the priest and trying to make it look like a nutter.
A lot of pieces of evidence were collected, including a number of pieces of linen, as investigators believed she had been stabbed through an altar cloth because she was partially covered by an altar cloth that was then covered in her blood. At the time, they had no DNA evidence. Now, in 1980, DNA evidence was collected but hadn't been used successfully. It was actually later in the 80s when fingerprinting connected someone and then convicted them of that crime. So it was known about. It just hadn't really been successfully used to prove and convict someone.
No, like a lot of things, like if it goes to a cold case, it will be reviewed. They're reviewed every few years, and if they've got new technology, they...
Yeah, it's how we're solving a lot of these old ones now, because we've got technology not only to, well, first of all, test the DNA, but also different ways of testing it, like we can do that
would not want to be an
thing.
80s rapist now.
It's odd though, isn't it? Because there was the Golden State Killer, and when they found him, he was like in his 90s or whatever, like wheeled into court in a wheelchair, and it's like, look, I know he needs to be punished. I know he was a super bad guy, but right now you've just like paid for him to die in jail, basically.
Nature's punishing him. Like, he got away with it. You lost. Like, at that point, like, you just lost.
I suppose it's nice to have, like, the resolution, the knowing.
They could have just gone on and take a picture with him and I'd be happy. Like, yay, we got him.
Yeah, but I suppose it's nice to have the...
Like, get him convicted.
Finality of it, like to...
Get him convicted and send him home. He's 90. What's he going to do?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think he knew what was going on.
It's just an expense at that point. Like, let him rot in a home.
But the point is, they are solving these really old crimes really late on. So they took anything they found, but there wasn't really anything to go on at that time. There were no fingerprints to collect. They found no fibres other than these altar cloths. There was no foreign fibres, I guess. So nothing that seemed out of place, didn't belong to Sister Margaret Ann. There were reports of sexual assault. This was never truly confirmed. As I understand it, the scene was made to look as if she had been sexually assaulted, but they had been unable to prove it.
Like the ripping of the clothes and shit. Like,
yeah.
Staged.
Yeah. And some
newspapers... With the like cross as well, that's like scream stage, because you don't get many people that are actually that nuts that they carve into their victims. That's quite rare.
Yeah.
If you look at how many murders happen, which is, just don't look up.
Yeah, a lot. But I think also...
I learned that a woman a day is murdered in Britain.
I'm surprised it's only one.
Like, a woman a day. I thought that was like, ridiculous for murder. I get like...
Genuinely surprised it's only one. Like, I honestly thought it'd be more. But yeah, murder statistics are high, yes. But they say that the scene, a couple of newspapers reported to say that it looked as if she had been sexually assaulted with a cross. Now, I feel like even in 1980, they would have been able to tell, and it was never confirmed. So I just want to be clear that this was a lot of hearsay around whether or not she had or she hadn't been. Yes. But again, like, I couldn't find anything police-based to say.
Just give it a sniff.
So, oh, that's great. That's one of the worst things you've ever said. But it would be covered in blood, though, wouldn't it? So it would just be blood. But I think you would be able to tell because although, again, technology and sort of processes that we do now are not what they are much more improved than they were in 1980, I just feel like that would have been proven. All we know for sure is that she was stabbed 32 times and strangled.
Yeah, I think all the rest is what the person who stabbed them wants you to believe.
Well, it's thought that it's just all of this adds like humiliation, especially given her role in society, you know, that it meant even more to her to not be exposed and to not be...
I'm not getting that as the vibe of the killing, though. I don't think it was a murderer looking to embarrass a nun. I think the embarrassment is a side effect of them trying to make it look like a sexual assault, if you know what I mean. So far, and you're in a hospital, so you've got so much easy access to like scrubs and gloves.
Yeah.
Could be anyone in there.
Now, blood was smeared across her forehead as if last rites had been administered. Now, I found this particularly interesting because are you someone that would normally administer last rites because you do like the anointing of the forehead thing, or are you someone that's trying to make it look as if you're someone that would administer last rites?
It's all a bit too extreme for me. I do think there's a lot of staging going on here.
It's a very deep, dark crime if it's somebody's first crime as well, I thought.
It depends if that person is of their right mind, because if they have had a mental break, they may not even know what they're doing.
But then to leave no sign of themselves at the crime and...
Hey, if you don't like, some people, A, get lucky, and B, sometimes your mental break person is quite good at this kind of stuff.
Well, I thought investigators did a pretty thorough job initially. They interviewed everyone, so all the staff, everyone there that morning, Reverend Jerome Swatecki and Father Gerald Robinson. They actually both performed mass at Sister Margaret Ann's funeral as well. Although it seems that some of the suspicion perhaps fell on Father Gerald Robinson.
Was he the one that did the mass she did not approve of?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, if he is being lax with mass on Sunday...
This was Good Friday, but yes, equally as important, I guess.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He may be phoning it in and may not be as religious as he seems.
Police reported he seemed cold and aloof when he saw Sister Margaret Ann's body.
Okay, but you might, just because she's dead doesn't mean he suddenly likes her.
Yeah. And eyewitnesses said they had seen him near the chapel. Now, I found that a bit odd because, like, you know, essentially it's his chapel. So yeah, he's going to be in and out.
That's not suspicious.
On Holy Saturday.
Now, if it was a rave, I'd be like, oh, that's suspicious.
Yeah.
But he can come and go from there all day as he pleases.
Now, here's the bit where I think it gets interesting because they actually suspected him so much they put him through a number of lie detector tests. But these didn't really get anywhere because Father Gerald told them he knew who killed her. He said someone had admitted the murder to him during Catholic confession, and because of the severity of Catholic confession, he would never reveal their identity. Now, if he is the killer, that's sort of smart, isn't it? Because now, no matter what if you fail a lie detector test, it can be like, well, I failed because I do know the answer to that, I just can't tell you.
Yeah.
But and also, I don't know, I just find, but like, if you did know, is there not, I know that Catholic confession is a serious deal, but is there not like some sort of rule where it's like, if you've killed someone, I'm sure he can.
I think you can.
Yeah.
But I think the devout won't, and I respect that.
Apparently, when police asked him why anyone would want to kill her, he said she was a very dominant woman.
Pain in the ass.
Yeah. Which sort of makes sense if, like, you know, she's on at you for your 5 minutes short sermon or whatever.
Yeah, but I think he answered the wrong question. I think they asked why would others have it, and he answered why he would murder her.
Now, this is 1980, and even today, religion does tend to keep scandal, or try and keep scandal, within its own walls.
Just a little bit.
And the church leaders basically helped run this town So this was in Toledo, Ohio. And Father Robinson was described as a pillar of the community. I've got to be honest, I wouldn't really want to be a pillar of the community for so many reasons.
Think of what a pillar does. It holds shit up.
First of all, like, you know, it does feel exhausting, and that I feel like there constantly be people talking to you about like the community, which I don't know, maybe it's and
if it's not them, it's God.
Yeah, but also they're always involved in stuff like this.
Yeah,
so it's always the pillars of the community. Maybe they've just been crushed under the pressure of being a pillar.
Well, I think there's a lot of overcompensation going on. They do it like a lot of the time. They want to see it appear so good because they're doing so evil on the other end of it. Like they want to be the guy that no one suspects.
So at the time, and probably even on some level now, if a priest or a father or a clergy person did something wrong, you handed them over to the bishop to bring down their punishment. You tried to keep it out of the criminal side of things.
They usually get carted off to the arse end of nowhere to rot.
And there was a lot of talk of a cover-up of this type at this point. In a book written by David Yonk, Sin, Shame and Secrets, he said the area, Toledo, was devoutly Catholic and the police chief was a very, very devoted Catholic, him and his family. And apparently there was pressure on him not to press charges. No charges were brought, apparently because of a lack of evidence, which may well be true, but it's kind of hard to know because we all got bogged down at this point in talk of a cover-up. Detectives later testified that against procedure, the police chief had pulled Robinson in the middle of the investigation, given him a special escort and allowed him to leave, shut down the investigation, and apparently there were reports that were just never seen again. So it does sound like at the very least...
You got the friends of family bonus.
Yeah. So, but we've not much else to go on. And the church effectively...
Both things can be true.
Yeah, exactly.
They could have not had enough evidence and he wanted to keep it quiet.
Yeah.
So instead of him going through the rigmarole of like being publicly escorted out, he got him out of there quietly. Yeah. So both things can be true. It doesn't mean he murdered him.
No.
But it is... The church does this, and I've made my feelings very clear on the subject.
We've not much else to go on, and the church effectively battening down the hatches at this point. The case goes cold for 20 years.
Yeah, I can see that. Another thing with a hospital, it's a naturally very clean place. So...
Yeah.
No, I just think that, like, because it's so clean, there's less chance of you, like, there'll be antibacterial stuff, like, stuff still on the floor that will probably take away some DNA evidence and fingerprints and stuff.
I found it interesting how
there's just oils that leave your fingerprints.
Like, in that, marble floor where she was found, they didn't find anything like footprints, nothing like that.
That's got a high-grade cleaner or detergent on it that's actually, like, doing its job. Like,
and I mean, there was a window of about an hour.
They could have cleaned up some evidence as well.
But then they never found, you would have to, if you're stabbing someone 32 times, you've got blood on you.
If they put the sheet over them, it's quite clever to put the sheet over them.
True.
Because as you stab through, you're minimising the amount of blood. And you can take off bloody scrubs and throw them in like any laundry bin and it won't be suspicious because there'll be other bloody things in there because that's the nature of it. Like,
I wonder if
you can murder someone, be covered in blood and walk out the hospital and no one's going to question you until you get to the bout reception.
I wonder if today, it was only a small hospital though and everyone knew the priest. So you'd think if it was him, that would have been noticed. Yeah,
I'm just saying in the hospital setting. I'm not saying in this instance.
I wonder if today they would have, and I don't know that they didn't do this, but maybe they would have made more of an effort to search all of the bins and things like that. They might have done that. But either way, we don't have it. There's obviously some evidence there that's either gone missing or never existed. Then, in 2003, the Toledo Diocese received a letter, a woman stating that she had been subjected to ritualised sex acts by members of the clergy.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that, isn't there?
You pent it up for so long, it comes out in gross ways.
The letter was eventually handed over to the police, and in the letter, the woman named, and the woman is, we don't know who she was to this day. She actually named Father Robinson as one of her abusers. This set off alarm bells for some of the investigators, and of course, you've got a whole new crop of investigators 20 years later. Young, hungry, technology has moved on.
Not as religious,
yeah. They decided to reopen the investigation for Sister Margaret Ann. Now, they used blood transfer technology. Now, this wasn't DNA. This isn't strictly speaking DNA. I think we've been through this before. So transfer DNA, like touch DNA, it could be anything. If you brush up against someone in a shop, things like that, they were able to find some of that, and they were also able to determine things like where the murder weapon was put down in the room by the shape of the blood that was on the floor and things like that. So they were able to find out a little bit more this time forensically than they had been able to in the 80s. And as part of the original investigation, they'd actually taken a sword-shaped letter opener from Father Robinson's office Now, at the time, this just got put in an evidence bag and filed away. But now they believe that they had enough evidence to prove that that was the murder weapon. And they exhumed poor Sister Margaret's body, which I'm sure was just adding insult to injury at this stage. And in 2004, Father Robinson was arrested for murder. Now, fun fact, he lived next door to the police station, which I found quite ballsy if you've murdered someone 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's convenient. I'd love to have gotten that job.
Pop next door and arrest this guy. He won't see us coming because we're parked out front anyway. Also,
he's an old priest, so he won't put up a fight. Yeah, I mean, I hope they've got more evidence than this. A
bit. Now, the DSCs did turn on him at this point. They banned him from doing anything priesty and refused to help him pay his legal fees. Now, I say that because there has been instances where members of religions have gotten in trouble before and they've really been, stood by. So they're allowed to go into prison and practice their religion and they maintain their innocence, and the church will often help you pay for stuff.
Well, I imagine
not in this case.
What I imagine is because they know he's done wrong.
They were like, enough's enough.
You're like, we're not paying to lose this legal battle because we know you did it. We've covered it up as best we could. You've lost. You're done.
Well, although the church turned on him, his devout followers didn't. People actually put up their houses to help him raise cash to pay for bail.
Religion is crazy.
That's mad, isn't it? Your priest has been accused of ritualized abuse and is now arrested for a 23-year-old murder. And you're like, oh yeah, have my house just to I trust you that much.
Well, all he's got to say is it's the devil.
And the DSCs are like, nah, forget him.
Yeah, I mean, if the DSCs are giving up on him, I don't know why Margaret isn't.
No,
surely they're his boss.
Yeah.
They should
of course they are.
Be like, oh, they've said he's bad. He must be bad. Yeah. Lunacy.
No. So some stayed absolutely with him on this. One person interviewed at the time said they didn't believe that Father Jerry could possibly have lived with such a thing for 23 years. There was just no way.
I'm sorry, but he works in a religion whereby all you've got to do is confess your sins and you get absolved of them. He hasn't been living with anything because he truly believes that if he apologizes to God and does something with his rosary beads, he's good.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have guilt to live with because his sin has been taken from him. In his mind is what is if he is involved in this.
And there was a lot going on with the Catholic Church in general at this stage. You've got these particular abuse claims in this town, but you've also got bigger ones like in Boston. That was when the whole first lot of claims came out and it became like a national scandal when everyone was like, I've been abused by my priest. You remember, it's still going on today, but like when it really started to kick off.
Like Cardinal Pell in Australia.
Oh, yeah, all of it, So it was just sort of I don't want to necessarily say one took to the other, but I think maybe it gave others confidence to actually speak out. It just sort of happens like that, doesn't it, sometimes? But some religions weren't, priests weren't necessarily being put on the same pedestal they were before. Another person said at the time that it was disappointing, but that the clergy are only human. It didn't shake his faith.
No, I mean...
I sort of get that.
That is the correct view to have on it, because we don't give up on humanity just because we've got some rotten eggs in it. No. So,
well, Robinson went to trial in 2006 and was convicted of the murder of Sister Margaret Ann Pahl. He maintained his innocence and launched numerous appeals. He lost them all. He died in prison in 2014 following a heart attack. He was 76. There was nothing untoward.
I mean, prison and being a priest, probably not that vastly different a lifestyle, really.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on what sort of life you carve for yourself in prison, because a lot of people do turn to religion, and even though he wasn't technically meant to be giving out sermons...
Right, so not to be rude, but where's the mystery here? Because we've ended with a conviction.
Well, So, the prosecution argued that he had snapped after years of nitpicking by Sister Margaret Ann. She, liked things done properly and by the book, and people had described her as old school. Now, of course, she had the complaints about the Good Friday service, and maybe this tipped him over the edge. But they didn't really have any evidence. Now, they had the transfer evidence, but you could argue that they worked together, and she may well have seen him that morning because she was in the chapel getting everything ready. But there wasn't any really physical evidence that proved it was him, because new technology confirmed the presence of male DNA under Sister Margaret's fingernails and on her underwear, which was male, but not Robinson's.
So again, two things can be true. So he may be a perv, but he might not be a murderer. Or he may not be a perv and he may be a murderer. Yeah. Or he's neither.
Or he's both.
Or he's both, yeah. There's your little diagram of all the options.
Now, supposedly they found a book of satanic black mass, or how to perform satanic black mass, with his belongings. But a lot of his supporters said that they felt he was maybe a bit of a scapegoat, like he'd been called out as the bad seed. Scapegoat.
No, he's a scapegoat. Took me a second to twig on that one.
He was a bit of a scapegoat. That he'd been called out as the bad seed and almost sacrificed by the church because they had all this bad press going on with abuse and that. So they were almost saying like, right, you've done this. We've cast him out. We want nothing to do with him. Now let's get back to religion. So some people felt that he was just being thrown under the bus when really there was no actual evidence that he'd done this.
I believe that there's a high chance that he did do this, but I have a strong distrust for the clergy.
Yeah. Do you think they'd let you on a jury in this case? Because you're just no, I don't think they would. Because you're already a bit like biased towards.
I don't think I'd get on many juries. Not if I can help it.
I'd love to do jury duty.
Oh no. I'd love to sit and listen to the stories, but arguing with the simpletons I've got to do it with, no. like one person's like, no, I definitely think you did it. Like, there's no evidence. No, definitely. You're there for 4 hours. No, fuck that. And yeah, no.
I mean, others believed the system had worked as it was supposed to, and they were sure he did it. So it really divided this town. Now, it might be interesting to note that the woman who wrote the letter about the abuse did try and press charges, but the case was thrown out in 2011 because of the statute of limitations, which I didn't realise there was one for such historic abuse. But either way, they said she couldn't press charges, so that was that.
I think it depends on the level of abuse you're claiming.
In the letter, it said some pretty dark stuff happened. Satanic rituals, involvement in the murder of children and human sacrifice, sexual abuse, which was allegedly quite obscene, and that the priests would dress up as nuns at the end, which is weird, isn't it?
Sounds like bollocks to me, to be perfectly honest. And I don't like the clergy, but that's a lot.
It is a lot, isn't it?
Like, that is some Monty Python level tomfoolery. Like, that is some ridiculous stuff.
The reason I bring that up is that letter is what reopened this case, and essentially Robinson was then convicted. But there wasn't enough evidence to convict him in 1980. And some people argue that there's still not really, because you've determined that there was DNA under her fingernails and on her underwear that was male. And I don't know what type of DNA, just that it said DNA evidence was there. But it wasn't his. They were able to determine it wasn't his. So that really just doesn't link him to this at all, does it? So it's almost like just irrelevant.
No, as much as I'd love for him to be caught and in everything being a nice little bow, but it's not. And I don't think you can prosecute this man based on that. It's really unfair.
Well, there's been many a report about cover-ups by the church, hasn't there? I mean, only recently you had the Netflix documentary, The Keepers. I think you watched that. It's a different case. It wasn't anything to do with this one, but it showed how far the church will go in an effort to try and keep things within the church walls. So, again, they'll
let you rape the hell out of a kid or two before they throw you under the bus. Like, they're very secretive.
But I was surprised that in all the appeals, he didn't ever get granted like a new trial or anything based on this DNA evidence. Because normally that is the sort of thing that gets things overturned.
Once public opinion turns, because he was on such a pedestal, his fall is so much greater, he cannot come back from it.
I can see the argument about being a scapegoat.
I can too. That's the problem. I can see all of these options. The evidence is not pointed in any one solid direction.
And here is your mystery.
They've got a conviction at the beginning of an investigation. They've got like 3 solid options to go down, yet they've managed to convict a guy based on a letter that claims that he did something.
Yeah.
It's bizarre, and don't get how he's gotten into prison this way, especially a clergyman, because you would have thought they'd at least take care in making sure he was convicted correctly.
You would think. I found it interesting that they just, when he was arrested, they were like, no, you're done. Like, they gave up on him. Whereas I would have thought they would at least let it go to trial and try and help him.
It's either that they knew what he had done and were like, you're caught, fuck off. Or
the scapegoat thing.
We know that as much as people want it to be that way, people get like the jurors see what happens in the news, they get their opinions, and I think because his fall was so far, everyone's opinion is made. He's a rapist, he's a murderer. They've got enough based on the few bits of evidence to back up what they want, so they're happy.
The last thing, one of the appeals that the defence tried to launch failed, but they tried to argue that not enough attention was paid to another suspect, serial killer Carl, nicknamed Coral, Eugene Watts. Now, he had at least 14 victims, and they think it may have even been into the hundreds. He was actively on his serial killing rampage at the time of Sister Margaret Ann's death, and he was based around 40 miles away in Michigan. He did stab and strangle, but he was doing it to mainly attractive young women, generally no older than 40.
I mean, it's a bit of a stretch, but again,
a bit of a stretch, isn't it?
They haven't provided the evidence to say it can't be because of this.
Yeah.
So,
and I did think like, okay, it's not quite his normal thing. But if you're killing potentially hundreds of women and you happen to be in that hospital, let's say that you travelled 40 miles and you needed some help and you went to a Catholic hospital that you knew would help people coming in from the street and needed help. And then you found this old school nun who maybe she gave you a telling off. And this is all speculation, obviously. Maybe you're in the chapel and she's telling you to get your life together and you go for it. You do your normal stabbing.
Well, yeah, but we can't just assume because he's a murderer, he went and did this murder.
It is speculation. And I think that's the point that the police say. There's nothing really to tie it to him. So yeah, it could have been. But again, we go down this road with most serial killers, don't we? It could have been loads of people. There's always a serial killer in the area.
Yeah, and just because I believe that the strongest chance is that the priest did do it, doesn't mean I'm going to abandon my belief that to put someone in prison, you've got to have some evidence to do it.
And let's not forget, initially in 1980, Father Robinson told the police that he knew who had done it through confession. So you're then saying that Coral, the serial killer, doesn't sound very menacing, does it? That Coral went to confession and confessed before heading back to Michigan. Well, my final thought on this was, if the church has kicked you out and aren't helping you, wouldn't you break the rules and say who confessed to you in order to get out of prison?
Not if you believe it, because you're still going to want to be on God's side, even if...
Well, that's sort of it. He got convicted for it. It was marked as solved. But was it?
They may have the right guy in prison, but the case wasn't solved. They've got the right answer, but they haven't shown their workings.
I think we've argued so many times, haven't we? Like Kaylee Anthony...
Yeah, I'm not going to argue for those people and then not advocate for a priest.
No, exactly,
I need to give him the benefit of the doubt like I give everyone else. And
we've
the fact
argued so many times about lack of DNA evidence, lack of actual proof. And I'm not sure that there is. Okay, evidence aside though, do you think he did it?
My opinion is he did it.
Yeah.
But opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got them.
I think he probably did it just because, or not necessarily him. I definitely think someone with the church was involved. They made it, tried to make it look so much like it was someone that hated the church. Yeah.
And it was just overkill.
Because, all right, the murder weapon was found in his office, but isn't that exactly where you'd put it if you were trying to plant it on it?
Doesn't it also depend what way you're stabbing, depending on whether a cross is upside down or the right way around?
I guess. But I suppose you're always going to view a body like
but you'll but you might be stabbing it from the head downwards, so you've actually drawn a cross.
And then you turned and done it.
Oh shit! From this way, it's upside down.
I think the general view was that it was to, in some way, humiliate her or make it look particularly bad.
Yeah,
and
I think it was. I think it was to move suspicion a lot.
Yeah,
but I don't. Yeah, we'll never know because they fucked it.
And I guess that's the whole mystery thing of it.
Yep. Mystery news.
Got 2 little Easter nuggets for you.
Ew.
I mean, we've already obviously now spoken about Easter eggs as well, so we've sort of covered that, although I'm not sure we really got
What the fuck's an Easter nugget? And I don't want to...
Little nuggets of information.
Oh, okay. Sounds like something the dog does.
So first of all, I thought it was cool to find out that in Norway at Easter, they actually enjoy postekrims. I hope I've said that right, or I've just said something blasphemous in Norwegian, which is loosely translated as an Easter mystery. And they read crime novels to celebrate the weekend.
That's quite cool.
Isn't it? I love that. And also, like, they point out that it's actually still winter in Norway. So it's all like, forget spring and bunnies. It's like dark little wooden cabins and...
It's always winter in Norway.
Yeah. But apparently this was because in 1923, on the front page of a Norwegian newspaper, they announced a train robbery on the country's Bergen line. And this sensational, I guess, headline was actually an advertisement for a new crime novel, but people thought it was fact. People thought it had actually happened. And that crime novel then became a bestseller and the tradition was born. And I just thought that was a really cool way. So maybe this weekend you'll want to celebrate Easter with a crime novel. Who needs eggs? Have both. Have it all.
Yep, fertility symbol and a little bit of crime.
Chocolate egg. And a hot cross bun. I don't know why we have hot cross buns either, but they're great.
Well, the cross surely has got something to do with it.
Yeah, it's just the same as like fruit raisin bread, really, isn't it? Just with
it's gross.
A cross on it. And then secondly, my second nugget, if you will, is in Finland at Easter, instead of dressing up with like bunny ears, being all cute, the children dress up as witches. How much better is that? Right, Halloween come early.
That is cooler.
Yeah.
I mean...
They go door to door, much like a trick-or-treat situation, and hunt for treats. Most of the sources suggested they do this offering to bless the house in exchange for a little treat. So I thought that was cute. Although, frankly, if it was in this country, I love Halloween, right? But trick-or-treat is just like really get on my nerves after a while. Like,
Yeah.
A few, fine. But I just, especially like the older ones who've like put on a mask.
No, they need to come in groups as well, like get together, like dribs and drabs.
I don't know. I just don't know. It's fine for like a night. But I think the problem I've got with it is it's not just a night, is it? It's like a whole week. And then if you were doing this at Easter as well, I just feel like it would just get on my nerves.
Depends how well it's done as well and how much you embrace it. I think where like Halloween is so lame in this country.
Yeah, because in America, obviously the streets are filled with kids and you can put the stuff out the front if you want to. If you don't want it. And generally there is a bit of an honour system, whereas I feel like here that honour system would fall flat and it would be gone. And my bowl, they'd just take my bowl.
Yeah. That'd be smashed in the middle of the road.
So... but the tradition of dressing up as witches is said to have come from the belief that witches would fly to Germany and cavort with Satan, and bonfires are meant to scare them away. So that actually is quite dark.
I like it though.
Yeah, I do.
Like fuck. What's his face? Jesus.
That's a bold statement for our Easter episode. So far, we've talked about blasphemy, the murder of nuns. We've basically like poo-pooed the idea of eggs.
I brought up child rape.
Yeah. So, hope you've enjoyed our Easter episode. But I thought, even though Mystery News is a bit different because there's not really any mystery in that, I just thought it was cool to have 2 additional ways that you might want to celebrate Easter this weekend.
The mystery is why we do it the lame way.
Yeah. I enjoy a hot cross bun. I'm going to have a hot cross bun and read a crime novel.
But you dressed up as a witch.
Dressed up as a witch. I might go and knock on some of my neighbours' doors and offer to bless their house for a treat. They'll probably think I mean something sexual.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not doing that. Oh.
Mystery News.
I hope you've enjoyed our Easter episode, albeit dark and kind of horrible. But you can find out more about some of these interesting Easter traditions around the world on our blog at mysteryoflifepodcast.co.uk. And you can follow us on Instagram at the Mystery of Life Pod. Have a lovely Easter, eat lots of chocolate, read lots of crime, and we'll be back next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.